Today is February the 20th. This is Addison Schonland, and I'm speaking with Stephan Hannemann, who is VP EMA, right, at Embraer?
MEA.
MEA. I knew I'd get it wrong. Anyway, Stephan, it's good to talk with you. Good to see you again.
Likewise, very good to talk to you, Addison. It's been a long time.
Yeah. We spoke about this in Paris last year, getting together.
We did.
Anyway,
exactly,
it took us a while. And here we are. Okay, so I've got a bunch of things I want to talk with you about. I saw that you put something out on social media yesterday or the day before, which is hopefully, I thought this is good. He could bring that in. So let's start off like this. We're only in February, nearly the end of February, but Embraer is coming on strong this year. It really just feels like there's been a shift. And your specific area, though, is EMA. And we've seen interesting stuff going on in the market here. Can you talk to us about the region and its potential?
Absolutely. And I fully agree. I think we're starting off into a very exciting year for Embraer as a company at large, with the product platforms that we have online and also the ones that we are developing, like the Energia platform. Perhaps we can talk about that later as well, and the E1 freighter, a very interesting project also for Africa. But let's really talk about and zoom in on the African market. It's a market that gets a lot of attention at Embraer for all of the right reasons. We've been continuously growing our presence across the continent. Today, there's around 220 of our aircraft operating with around about 70 airlines, really truly all the way from Northern Africa, Egypt, Morocco, all the way down to South Africa, where you are right now, from West Africa to East Africa. And it's really truly all of the product platforms. So we've got the ERJ, which is still very strong, 50-seater aircraft. They're working very well in Africa. Through the last decade, of course, we built a big presence on the legacy E-jets, operating all over the continent. A big operator in South Africa with Airlink operating over 30 of the type, adding 9 aircraft only last year. So there was a year of strong growth. And then, of course, we've got the E2 generation also operating on the continent with Airpeace in Nigeria, with 5 E195 E2s, which will continue to grow their fleet. So that's where we are today. And I wanted to share these stats and that background with you, because I think it's important to recognize that there's a strong relevance in the segment and also in the Embraer product portfolio. And if you look into let's say, into the wider African air transport market, you will see that, if you look into the capacity that you have in the market today versus pre-pandemic, capacity-wise, almost back to zero. Almost back to 100%. I think that's the better terminology. 0% is not good. But passenger numbers are still slightly lagging behind. But I think this year we will see that the passenger numbers are going to rebound to pre-pandemic levels. What's more interesting is that we were able to grow our fleet on the continent by 15%. If you compare today fleet figures with what we saw before the pandemic. And then maybe, Addison, just the last sentence around, you were asking what's the outlook that we have. I think if you look into the key ingredients, let's say the key indicators around determining how is this market going to develop, we are very bullish about the market. Very strong population growth on the African continent. It is one of the youngest, it's the youngest continent actually on the planet. Around 50% of the population is age 20 or less. Those are young people, future travelers. They have a higher propensity to travel than older generations. And on top of that, we've seen strong growth across industries, across tourism as well. So if you combine these factors together, we are very bullish around the future outlook in terms of the traffic development. Of course, there's a lot of challenges out there. I'm sure we're going to talk about them. Deregulation that needs to happen. Connectivity is still an issue. But overall, we're very bullish. And if you look into our global market outlook, just for Africa, we would foresee around 300 brand new aircraft in this segment, up to 150 seats to be delivered from today over the next 20 years. And if you combine that with Middle East, which has a few of the North African countries as part of the number, we're talking about 660 new aircraft to replace aging aircraft, drive connectivity, and of course also act on sustainability targets, especially the net zero mission by 2050.
Interesting. One of the things that jumped out at me earlier this year was the Airpeace order for E175s. Typically, the 175 has been seen as a US regional jet. That's been, I don't know, maybe over 90% have gone into that market for the 175. You had some in India, but now you also have Nigeria. And I don't know if those airplanes are being used domestically in Nigeria or if they're used regionally in other countries. But clearly, that size airplane you would think would have a really good prospect, because the flow of traffic is not massive. So you have long, thin routes, and something that would work around a long, thin route seems to be a good idea. The 175 being brought into Nigeria was really an interesting idea.
Absolutely. And I think, as you said, the E175 already today is the most successful variant from the legacy E-Jet generation, right? And you also said most of those aircraft, they're going to North America. That of course has some. It's also driven by scope clause in the US. You're very well aware about the US scope clause. So the aircraft has been super successful. And one of the reasons why it's been very successful is because in 2013, we gave the aircraft a significant upgrade. We reduced fuel burn by 6.4% through some changes that we did on the hardware, really on the aircraft. So it's a very highly economic, a very highly efficient aircraft. And Airpeace in Nigeria is certainly not the only operator of the type on the continent. So we've seen very significant demand over the last couple of years. Next to Nigeria, and let's come back to Nigeria in a moment, of course, but next to the order with Airpeace, we've also delivered brand new E175s to Mauritania over the course of the last couple of years. We have just delivered the first of 3 E175s to Overland. That's also another Nigerian operator. And there's more E175 aircraft operating across the continent, especially also in South Africa. And you're right that the size with, let's say, dual class around 70 to 80 seats, single class configuration is around 80 to 88 seats. It's the perfect size actually for the African continent to increase connectivity, to launch new markets with lower cost and higher profitability. So that's really where the aircraft plays a very strong value proposition. And coming back to Nigeria, which is truly a focus market for Embraer. This is a country of a population of more than 200 million people. And the population will continue to grow. This is going to be one of the, I would say, strongest growth markets in terms of air transport development over the next decades. And we're very proud through the relationships that we have built with the operator base, not only Airpeace, which is, by the way, flying ERJs, E2s, and now they're going to get the E175 to replace the ERJs. but also United Nigeria, another operator locally. They're flying ERJ 145s, looking to grow into the slightly larger aircraft. The E175 could be a very interesting aircraft for them as well. And then there's Overland Airways, right? They closed a deal with us about 2 years ago for 3 firm E175s. And they just took delivery of the first aircraft, and soon we're going to be delivering the second E175. One of the main challenges in Nigeria is around the financing. That's a very big challenge. Forex, so the foreign exchange Naira to the US dollar, that's very challenging. So we're working very closely together with the airlines around working on a short and medium term through those challenges. And we have been successful in the case of Airpeace, as well as in the case of Overland, to work with local banks and financiers to get those aircraft financed. So we're very bullish about the Nigerian market, and we believe that regardless if it's the E1 or the E2, both, by the way, have great commonality. So when Airpeace is going to fly the E175, their pilots can on any given day also operate the E2. So there's great commonality between both aircraft types.
So the thing that intrigues me about regional jets in the African market, it's an odd place. You have these huge distances, poor roads, and it's not a secret, there's security issues of driving some of these back roads. You know, it can be dangerous. So you would think that not just air traffic, but also cargo, particularly valuable cargo, and Africa has got lots of valuable cargo. I mean, diamonds, for example.
Yeah.
You would think that there would be a much more robust regional lift system to connect the major cities. How do you explain this lack of? It's developed, as you pointed out, with Airlink in South Africa. That's a much more mature air travel market. But you look at Nigeria, there are strange things that some countries in Europe, some countries in Africa, to get from one nation to another, the shortest route is through
Europe.
It's through Brussels. It's crazy.
Yeah, and it's unsustainable.
100%. And it's not green, that's for sure. So you look at this and you say, what's the problem here? Is it nation states that don't get the vision of how powerful a free reigning commercial aviation system can create jobs, create opportunities, create economic wealth? What is the problem?
I think so regulation or deregulation, or the lack of deregulation, that's certainly a very big issue, and we would probably be discussing now for hours to come around how can this be overcome. And there are some very important efforts being taken by the airline authorities like AFRA, AFCAC, especially around the SATAM, the Single African Air Traffic Market. I think that's a very important initiative that needs to be continuously rolled out on the continent. And I think we've seen the examples initially around deregulation in North America, then we've seen that in Europe, and overall, the experiences made in those regions around deregulating the markets have been incredibly powerful and successful, right? More connectivity, fares are lower, more choice for travelers, strong inputs in terms of development also of economies. So I think that would be my quick response around the deregulation factor. But I wanted to come back to you on the first point that you made around getting around from A to B. And you're completely right. We're talking about Africa is 54 countries. It's 8 hours flying from north to south. It's probably give or take the same flying east to west. So first of all, it is a huge continent. It's a huge continent, very remote. And one of the reasons why we are so bullish for the future is that a lot of the focus from our point of view is going to be around regional connectivity. Those young peoples, especially, they don't it's not the first trip on their bucket list to fly to Paris, Brussels, Amsterdam, or London. These people, also from a trade and tourism point of view, they will in the future, as also markets further deregulate, visa situations will improve. They will be traveling within the region. So there will be a lot of focus and emphasis on regional connectivity. Only 30% of intra-regional flights in Africa, Edison, are operated with a daily frequency or more. Only 30%. And that includes your Joburg, Cape Town, Joburg, Durban already. That means that 70% of the flights are really operated with less than a daily frequency. In many cases, it is only 1 or 2 flights a week. And that's, of course, very inefficient for the traveling public. So there's great opportunities around increasing frequency with smaller aircraft. And I think our aircraft, and you can see that today with airlines like Airlink in South Africa or AWA in Ghana with their ERJ fleet. Let's talk about Airlink since you're in South Africa right now. They fly over 60 Embraer aircraft from 40 seats all the way to 120 seats. They have really developed a strong USP, a unique selling proposition, allowing them to forge very strong partnerships with some of the African and non-African intercontinental airlines coming into Joburg. And why is that? Because once the passengers from Europe, Asia, America arrive into Joburg, Airlink offers seamless connectivity to more or less any destination several times per day. These bigger carriers, even the hub carriers from Africa, let's take very well developed airlines like Ethiopian or Kenya Airways. They have a very flexible fleet, but even for them, it will be impossible to go to places like Pietermaritzburg, for instance, or George. These markets are too small, and I think that's where the Embraer aircraft and the Airlink strategy have really provided a great success story around connectivity. And then before I give you too long of an answer, let me move to the cargo part, because I thought that was very interesting. I think especially through the pandemic, we saw globally a surge in e-commerce. And this was no different in Africa as well. People starting to order online. And from our point of view and from my personal point of view, e-commerce will continue to grow into the future. That's the new future way of procuring products, right? I'm confident there will be strong growth as we move forward. And one of the characteristics with e-commerce is once you have ordered your good, you want to have it as fast as possible. You would ideally like to have it on the next day. That is still a very big challenge in Africa, especially on some of the smaller routes. You don't have the cargo aircraft come through on a daily basis, or even on even a couple of times a week. And one of the reasons for that is that perhaps there hasn't really been an optimized offering from the OEMs in terms of the products on the market. So during the pandemic, Embraer launched the E1 Freighter program, which is a P2F, a passenger to freighter conversion, first for the 190 and then also for the E195, 12 to 14 tons payload. And we believe that we have a very strong value proposition here, especially with the E190 freighter, which will be the first one, to upgauge from turboprops. Turboprops are very efficient on very short routes. But e-commerce is bringing an additional challenge of the packages. They're quite large, right? It's small in weight, but large in terms of size. So the E1 freighter, if you compare it to the turboprops, is going to bring volume. It's going to bring range. The E190 freighter can easily fly over 2,000 nautical miles. Great speed, great efficiency. And then if you compare it to the legacy narrow-body freighters that you have, there's a great potential for right-sizing. One of the issues why some of those narrow-body freighters are not going on high frequency, let's say between Nairobi and a smaller destination in East Africa, is because you need to have the aircraft full in order for this to be a profitable mission. So flights are not going to operate on a daily basis. So we're very excited about the E1 freighter moving forward, and there's been very strong interest on the African continent. One of the main names that we're talking to is Astral Aviation. That's why I was mentioning Nairobi as a future operator of the E1 freighter.
Right. They would be target number one in the African market.
They are a great airline. They've got a stellar reputation. They're expanding the business. There's a clear need, and the E1 freighter simply, suits very well into their future fleet strategy.
Sure. Okay. We've been going quite a while here, so I want to just jump to my last question. Looking 5 years out, what would be? You mentioned before that the volume over the next 20, 30 years of airplanes, but you mentioned also the Energia. So let's look at 5 years. What could we expect to see? Energia may not be ready yet, but what can we expect to see across the African continent from an Embraer perspective? 5 years, not 20.
Yeah, that's a great question, Edison. So if I look at my crystal ball, and maybe also talking a little bit more about the hub airlines, the Ethiopians, the KQs, the SAAs, RAMs of the world. I think over the course of the next 5 years, you will see those airlines continuing to grow their operations. And also, I think what we're going to see is there will be an element of right sizing and upgauging. So some of them, they're already operating turboprop aircraft. I think those will be upgraded into aircraft of the size of an E2 family, which would be a perfect complement to the narrow bodies. So I think that's one of the areas where I will see strong development. And in addition to this, as you said, Energia, in 5 years' time, I'm sure we will have further progressed on this very exciting concept, right? We're looking into what is really the future concept of flying, electric, Stephan, hybrid. Yes.
Stephan, sorry to interrupt you. Apparently, we're about to have a power failure. Welcome to
When
South
is the
Africa.
Power failure going to happen?
Now. I've just been warned to finish my call with you. So thank you.
So you go ahead, Edison, please.
Okay, so thank you very much for your time with me today. I appreciate it. I'm sorry we have to cut it short like this.
Excellent, Edison. It was very good to talk to you. Speak very soon.
Thank you so much.
All the best to you. Bye-bye.
Bye.